Imagine if you are to live your whole life underwater like a fish, for example. How would your respiratory system look like? I am Mrs. Dua, and this is our 5th lesson from Learn, Adaptation and Survival concept. Our lesson will start with activity number 15, Observe like a scientist. In Observe like a scientist, we will compare the structure of the respiratory system of the fish with the respiratory system of human. Let's first watch a video together and take notes of the main respiratory organ in the fish and how does the respiration process take place. زي ما تعودنا مع بعض لما نيجي نتفرج على أي فيديو of any system, you should observe structure and function of each organ. والorgans هي ال body parts. Let's watch the video.
Fish use structures called gills that capture oxygen gas from water and give off waste carbon dioxide gas. Gills are respiratory organs consisting of layers of thin, feathery tissue richly supplied with blood vessels.
Look at that part. This is the main organ responsible for respiration in fish. This part is called the gills, and as you can see, they are on both sides of the head, from the right and the left sides. Then, how does the respiration process take place in fish? Water enters the mouth of the fish and passes across the gills, just like in our lungs. Blood vessels then carry oxygen to the rest of all the body. Now, I want you to read the text, then look at the questions at the end of the page. What are the similarities between the human respiratory system and the fish respiratory system? And what are the differences? Take your time to read the text and answer the questions, and then we will discuss the answers together. Let's start at the beginning with the similarities. Is the similarity is in the respiratory organ? تفتكروا هو ده التشابه؟ None. They are not similar. Something that we both breathe? Yes, exactly. Fish and humans breathe in oxygen and release carbon dioxide from their bodies. But there is a difference. We extract oxygen from the atmosphere through the lungs. Fish extract it from the water through the gills. أخدتوا بالكم؟ We get the oxygen from the air through the lungs, but fish get the oxygen from the water through the gills. Then we expel carbon dioxide out through the nose and mouth, but the fish expel it out through the gills. You might have also thought about the way in which oxygen is distributed in the body. These are the most important similarities and differences. Also, while I was reading, I noticed something in the last sentence. Let's read it together. Just as we need to breathe clean air to stay healthy, fish need clean water to survive. To survive means to live. This means that any living organism is connected to its environment, which needs to be suitable for living. What do you think would happen if we changed something about it? We will discover the answer of the question in the next activity, activity 13, Analyze like a scientist. In our activity, we will know that human is part of the ecosystem, so they can affect the environment and got affected by it. They can affect the environment whether positive by doing things that help the environment or negative by actions that harm the environment, and which we will also have an impact on animal adaptation. دايما بيكون لينا تأثيرات على البيئة اللي احنا عايشين فيها، سواء كانت تأثيرات positive إيجابية أو تأثيرات سلبية negative. هنركز جدا في الأكتيفيتي اللي جاية because our aim of the activity is to analyze the relation between human activities and their impact on the environment and how this can affect the adaptation of organisms over years. We will read the text, and what I need you to do is to underline the evidence that human activity contributes to rapid changes in an ecosystem and circle the impact that human activities have on plants and animals. تاني احنا مطلوب مننا في النشاط ده ان احنا نعمل underline على الدليل ان أنشطة الإنسان بتأثر على البيئة ونعمل circle على التأثير. The text that we will read is on page 30 and 31, and I read the first page with you so that you know exactly what to do. Other changes are caused by human activity. Humans change ecosystems when they farm, clear lands, and build communities. People cut down forests. شفتوا cut down forest? We will underline it. And plow grasslands. بيقطعوا الأراضي الزراعية. They fill in marshes and remove beach dunes. They remove beach dunes. They introduce plants, animals, and diseases that were never part of the ecosystem. These types of changes can, خلي بالكوا, displace native plants and animals for centuries. هنا مطلوب مننا نعمل circle لأن هو ده الدليل. There are some of the changes that can occur in the ecosystem as a result of human activities. And before we complete the text, let's see how a group of scientists study changes that happen in the North Pole. Do you remember who lived there? Right, it's the polar bear. Let's discover about that.
That gets to Easton Elementary School's question because they want to know, is it true that if an adult male polar bear gets hungry enough, it will eat its cubs, or it will eat cubs?
They will if they get the chance, but only if they're really hungry. If the male bear is really hungry and if the mama bear can't actually fight off the male, because she will try with everything that she has to keep him from eating the cubs.
So not a typical behavior.
It's not typical, but we see it happening more and more because the males are also getting skinnier because they can't get seals. Yeah. And so, of course, if there's a little morsel, they'll try and get it.
Sure. That makes sense. Well, thank you so much. Continue to send those questions. Let's shift here a little bit more because, Flavio, you do study ice and kind of the implications, climate change and so forth. Can you, again, real quick, just share what is it that you study? And then talk a little bit to us about this connection of water and ice.
أخدتوا بالكم? They have noticed strange and rare behavior of male of polar bears due to the lack of their main food. تفتكروا لما ما لقوش أكل عملوا إيه؟ They eat their little cubs. For scientists to understand this behavior, they started to study the habitat of polar bear. What evidence you think you will find and what would they discover? Let's continue together.
Especially we're talking about kind of ice in our backyard and how it's melting or not melting.
Yeah, I would like to do that. As mentioned, I'm a climate scientist, so I study this climate system as a whole, and with a lot of the changes that we've been seeing in the last couple of decades, we obviously start asking the question, what is going on? And one of the most prominent changes, and part of the reason we're up here, is the very fast changes that we see in the Arctic. I believe we have brought you a small movie to illustrate some of the things that have been going on in the Arctic, far up north of the United States. In this movie, we have sea ice, the important habitat for polar bears. And you see the white colors there illustrate ice that has been around for a couple of years. So it's rather old and thick ice. And the more blue the colors get, the thinner the ice is, the younger the ice is. And as you go through the 1990s, you see the numbers up there in the top left. You see that there is going to be less and less of this white old ice that is sort of resilient to changing temperatures and that hangs around for many years and provides a habitat for polar bears. And then in the 2000s, we again see this ice is moving, but it's going to kind of be less white and less thick. And this is really something we've been observing not only starting in the 1990s, but even a bit earlier. And then in the 2010s, in the last couple of years, as you can see, there is hardly any ice that is older than 5 or 6 years. So this really like robust ice that is important for polar bears has been vanishing dramatically, as you can see also comparing these two pictures. These are all data from satellites, so we're using a lot of high technology satellites to observe these places on the planet that are really hard to get to. Even to get out here to the tundra in Churchill was quite hard, and going up to the far North Pole, the pictures that you've seen in this movie, is even harder.
The evidence they got are images taken through satellites. These satellites are devices in space that can take images from anywhere on Earth. These images showed how the snow around the polar bear is melting over the years. The snow is their habitat and home. تخيلوا المشكلة طلعت فين؟ طلعت في الهابيتات بتاعتهم. The snow is melting. So here we have the problem. So, what is the relation between melting the snow and the behavior of bears? When the snow melts, some of the creatures that live there and are considered as the main source of food of polar bear either will migrate to another place or they will die. This would cause the polar bear to do unusual behaviors just to find food. But would the melting of snow affect other cold places? Let's see.
And the reason why this is important and plays into what we've been talking about before is this is really about water, but it's important in which phase it is. So as we've heard before from Kyle, not only we, but in particular the polar bears out of the window of this buggy are waiting for water to turn into ice so they can go out on the ice. One of the other things that are important about water is actually happening all over the place, not only in the Arctic, but in particular in the US, is like the availability of water for humans and agriculture. So one of the things we've seen in the last couple of years is increasing droughts. I'm sure the middle school from Southern California is aware of changes in droughts. You see a map here, I believe, of the United States, and you again see a number of colors. And the more red the colors are, the more dry, the drier this region is. And you see, for example, Southern California currently is in a very severe drought. There is very little water, and the reason why this is important is this region is really gets most of its water from snow that falls in winter onto the mountains and is stored, and then it melts in summer when everybody uses the water to water their lawns, to do agriculture, to drink it when it's warm. And if climate is warming up, then all of this water is not falling as snow anymore, but instead it falls as rain, and we can't store it from winter until the summer when we need it the most. So this warming planet has implications not only in the Arctic with the sea ice that most people are familiar, but it starts to also show its impact in regions where everybody lives, like the United States, particular Southern California. So this is really a critical thing to understand how climate change affects the water cycle, because water connects us all.
So the impact can reach other cold environments. What places can you remember that have the same cold climate? That's right, Antarctica, where the penguin lives. If all the same changes would happen in Antarctica, and how would the penguin adapt? It will certainly have to move its young babies to a safer place, especially if the distances between the snow have widened or the food might be less. So they would need to look for other sources. طبعا واضح جدا ان طالما هيحصل snow melting في place لازم يحصل ده في other places that have snow. وقتها other animals will need to adapt either by moving or finding another source of food. It will move for further distance to find snow. It may try to adapt in different ways, but certainly their lives might not be easier. Let us continue the second part of the text in order to explore more about the impact of humans on the environment And remember that we underline the evidence that human activity contributes to rapid changes in the ecosystem and circle the impact that human activities have on plants and animals. Let's review our answers together. I underlined air pollution, polluted soil, and waterways. These are evidence that human activities have impact on the environment. I circled the impacts, which are animals moving to another ecosystem to find what they need, plants must rely on their seeds landing in a better place, clean drinking water would be hard to find, polluted air and smoke causing damage of the lungs, conditions such as asthma and heart problems. Oops, this is too harmful for the environment. Can't we do anything to stop that? Of course we can. Let's say something negative that happens and another positive action that we can do to stop it. احنا أخدنا بالنا إن في أضرار كتيرة جدا بتحصل. لازم نبتدي نفكر في الإيجابيات والسلبيات. إيه المشاكل وإيه الحلول بتاعتها؟ تعالوا ناخد أول example. Water pollution is a negative thing that we can prevent by not throwing waste in rivers and cleaning waterways. And there are many other positive activities that we can do to solve the problem facing the environment. The most important thing is to think about the cause and effect of these actions to figure out the solution for it. Cause and effect relation is very important for scientists to understand the problem and find a solution. عشان نقدر نلاقي حل لأي مشكلة لازم نعرف السبب والنتيجة. Like what we did in the text, the cause is human activities and the effect is anything positive or negative that happens in the environment. With this activity, we end our learn lessons. And now we will start activity number 14, record evidence like a scientist. Our activity is part in share lessons. In share lessons, we will start sharing what we have learned together. Remember, we started by wonder lessons where we asked many questions about adaptations and then moved to learn lessons to gather information and ideas to answer all our questions. And now we are ready in share lessons to record all the evidence and information that we have. احنا دايما بنمشي في الليسنز بسيكونس. دايما بنتساءل الأول، بعدين بنبتدي نتعلم، وبعدين بنبتدي نشارك المعلومات اللي احنا اتعلمناها. This is why you have a new skill, record evidence like a scientist, which means we will start putting all evidence and information in a form of scientific explanation. Never worry about that. We will learn together how to do it step by step. First, open page 32. What do you see? Something familiar? Yes, the investigative phenomena about adaptation in penguins' feet. So the concept will always start with a phenomena and end with it. دايما في كل concept هنبتدي phenomena اللي هي المعلومة الرئيسية اللي احنا عايزين نستكشفها، اللي هي كانت أقدام البطاريق. What is that? Because when we started we had lots of questions and now we have information and answers that can make our understanding more solid. Let's remember together about the adaptation in penguins' feet, and when we are back, I'll tell you what to do. Now we are starting our first share lesson, and let's watch our penguins' feet video.
Blood vessels bring cold blood up from the bare feet. Warm blood comes down from the feather-coated body. Where the blood meets, the vessels wrap around each other allowing the hot blood to warm up the cold blood. It means blood going up into the body isn't cold, and blood pumping down is warm enough to keep their toes from freezing.
Let's now read the two questions we have. How can you describe penguins' feet now? How is your explanation different from before? For the first question, think about what you have learned about the adaptation that can help us explain this phenomena more clearly. For example, we learned about structural adaptations اللي كانت دايما بتبقى مرتبطة بالbody parts and the relation of adaptation to the ecosystem. And we learned new scientific terms that we can use in such as survival. That's why in the second question you need to think how your explanation is different from before. So I'll give you time to think about the questions, and when we are back, I'll share with you some of my students' responses. My student Ahmed answered the questions, and he said that the penguin's feet are short and do not have feathers. It's one of the structural adaptations that helps the penguin to survive in the polar region through the way the vessels weave around each other. It also helps the penguins to swim in the water. أخدتوا بالكم هو ركز على إيه؟ ركز على إن الpenguin's feet it doesn't have feather. إيه هي الحاجة اللي هتدفيها؟ The blood vessels which weave around each other اللي ملفوفة حوالين بعضها. His answer on the second question is, I described the feet of the penguin, how it helps the penguin to swim, and the type of adaptation in the feet. I guess you can also remember that the concept started by the question, how do different types of animals and plants adapt to survive extreme climates, like the very hot weather and very cold weather? We recorded in page 5 an initial simple answer for it. And we also used to see that questions in every lesson at the top of the page so that we can always remember we need to collect information to be able to write a scientific explanation that answers the question. But what does a scientific explanation mean? It means that our answers need to be logic and organized and supported by evidence. مش أي إجابة بالنسبة لنا نقدر نقول عليها إنها scientific knowledge. لازم تكون إجابة منطقية مرتبة ومؤكدة. And through all our lessons, we will learn how to write scientific explanation, so never worry about that. Just get all your notes and try to write an explanation to the question at page 33. And when you are back, we will review some answers together. I have here some explanations of students in my classes. Let's read them together to check what was the best thing in the answer and how it can be improved. Hiba wrote, animals and plants adapt in different ways in the ecosystem. There are two types of adaptation, structural and behavioral. Structural adaptation is an animal physical feature, such as the big ears of the fennec fox, the counter-shading of bull shark, and its ability to survive in fresh water. What I loved in Hiba's answer is that she mentioned how adaptation is connected to the environment and said that there are different types of adaptation for animals and plants, and gave examples to structural adaptation of some animals. What do you think can improve her answer? Yes, she can mention some examples of behavioral adaptation for animals and talk also about some plants. That's a very good start, Hiba. Amazing. What about Alia? Alia's answer says, adaptation is the characteristic and traits for living things that help them survive, such as big ears of the fennec fox, which help it to survive in the desert. Also, the short ears and legs of the Arctic fox to avoid exposure to the cold. There are also structural adaptations of plants, such as the taproot of the acacia tree. فاكرين التابروت كان عامل ازاي؟ كان very long and deep root to search for water. This helped the tree to absorb water from the ground. From the behavioral adaptation of animals is that ability of panther chameleon to change her color when it's in danger. And in plants, the poison that make the leaf taste terrible in the acacia tree. This is a perfect answer. She defined adaptation, mentioned its two main types, and gave enough examples from plants and animals. Alia and Hiba, you totally rocked it. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sure that all of my students watching me wrote clear scientific explanations for that question. Never be afraid of making mistakes. And I would love that you share some of your answers in our Facebook page مدرستنا. هستنى إجابات كتير منكم. Just write your name and your school. We came to the end of our lessons. Get ready so that we can review together. In our lesson today, we compared the respiratory system of humans and fish. We learned how fish have structural adaptations that help them to live underwater. We recognized the cause and effect relationship to understand about the human impact on ecosystem. We recorded the evidence we collected about the investigative phenomena, adaptation in penguins' feet, and wrote a scientific explanation of the main question of the concept. And the most important thing is that we practiced the skills of scientists through 3 different activities: observe like a scientist, analyze like a scientist, and record evidence like a scientist. We also talked about a lot of key vocabulary. الكي vocabulary هيكون مهم جدا معانا. من أول المرة اللي فاتت ابتدينا نتكلم على the human respiratory system. Then in this lesson we compared it with the fish respiratory system. After that we talked about some changes in the climate. وقلنا ان التغيرات البيئية دي حصلت mainly في الأركتيك. And Arctic region was the habitat of polar bears. And polar bears are predators. حصل ايه للpredators دول؟ ابتدوا يدوروا على another source of food وكانت مشكلة كبيرة. بعدين ابتدينا نتكلم على الhuman impact on environment. التأثيرات البيئية كانت كتيرة جدا. And we mentioned that humans pollute the environment. الهيومنز هم سبب رئيسي في التلوث اللي بيحصل في البيئة. Next time is our last lesson in the concept of adaptation and survival, in which we will review all what we have learned, and I'd love you to be ready because we will have rescue mission for one of the living creatures. What is our mission and who we will save? We will know next time. Thank you.